In 1993, Jelaila Starr began having contact experiences with extraterrestrials after realizing that she was a walk-in. She has been communicating with what she describes as the Niburian Council, which represents ancient elder extraterrestrials who have been guiding humanity to avoid the pitfalls of prior grand experiments in what she has described as the polarity integration game. And she's here back on Exopolitics today to discuss recent topical events concerning presidents, assassinations, and future disclosure.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome back, Jelaila.
Well, thank you. Good to be back.
Yes, I think it's a very good time to have you back to talk about exactly what has happened in the past and why that is relevant today. And I know we've done some interviews previously where we talked about some of these issues, and there was one kind of interview that we did where we talked about the second grand experiment, which is really going into the history of our solar system and these prior experiments. So that's our kind of like I think it was one of our later interviews, Navigating the Skyline and Charybdis of Full ET Disclosure. So why don't you just explain to us, to the audience, why getting the history or understanding the history is important for where we are today?
Well, that's a good place to start. You know that old saying that if you want to know where you're going, just look where you've been. And the beings that contacted me in 1993, they basically are historians. I mean, there's many other specialties amongst this ancient group, but they are a collective of multiple races. But their primary focuses for me were to be like a historian and explain where humanity has been in the cosmos as far as our soul evolutionary plan as a species. The second thing was to provide tools that were based on a higher level of consciousness that allowed these ancient elders to actually complete a universal game in another universe. They had to achieve that level of consciousness. So they provided some of those tools to us. And the third thing is to create what we consider to be blueprints or templates to put into the mass consciousness grid, basically seeding the grid at specific places for events that would transpire again as part of the plan to allow us as a species to make different choices on major events that occurred in previous grand experiments, third, what we call the planets that are set aside for what we call the final, the grand experiment for polarity integration, which is the ability to achieve harmony in diversity. So we have been doing that since 1996 because they didn't tell me who they were for the first 3.5 years. I mean, I had to do a lot of emotional clearing before they ever told me that if I was working with more than one person, and and I was ready to launch into the mission, the first mission that they gave me, which was to set the foundation templates around the country. So now we are in the second one after a 10-year hiatus to see how those templates held and how events transpired. So within those, the primary templates that we're seeing occur now, because these are destiny points on you could say it's the soul blueprint for an entire species. we have personal life blueprints, but we also have soul group and special life blueprints. So we are at a point in a grand experiment where here in a free will zone, we are able to recreate events and this time make a more compassionate choice than we made in the past. Because in the past, it ended with our planets being destroyed. So here, the main templates that we're experiencing right now are the one involving civil war and racism, the AI issue, transgender issue, where they're trying to destroy a species through basically, how do I explain this? Confusing them and causing them to lose their ability to procreate, which we're starting to see that as a drop in population. Another one that we're seeing is, well, we won't go into it too much, but the fake first contact, we worked on that one. We're pretty much past that one now. And then the one about the New Madrid fault, that one's coming up. And then, of course, a fake return of Nibiru, which they're starting to see the narrative on that as well. All these templates were done before 2025. Yeah, 2005. They were done between 1999 and 1997 and 2005.
So by template, just to clarify, by template, are you talking about like a timeline, a possible timeline?
What we're talking about is a destiny point, a blueprint to insert into a destiny point on our soul blueprint for our species. For example, the fake first contact, the template was done through a workshop. What we do is we bring, is I didn't bring the people together, but I was told to go out and travel and that I would be shown where I'm supposed to go and that there would be workshops. And so people would call and ask to sponsor a workshop. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's one place I'm supposed to go that year because I have assignments every year. And one of them was Colorado Springs. And that one was at the foot of NORAD, which I knew nothing about at that time. And it was for a fake alien contact event that would lead to a shotgun type of disclosure, which would cause cognitive dissonance in the population and eventually lead to a civil war, which they say if we ever end up in a civil war, we have lost because we have not learned how to move beyond civil war. So the way it works is that the people show up for the workshop. I don't know who's going to come. And I'm basically teaching galactic history and recoding DNA. That's my job during that workshop. But events transpire within the workshop with the participants that lead to a conflict. And then we have to apply these tools that they gave us on how to resolve the conflict, not in the way that we're taught as humans, but in the way that they teach us to resolve conflict, which allows us to turn something very negative and very ugly into something absolutely beautiful, because everybody is able to see their part and own that part. That's just kind of a brief piece. And then there's a healing that occurs. So when the conflict is occurring, all of a sudden the people start getting similar information. It's like they're pulling from their own Akashic records because they were all involved on another timeline in this event. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen, but it's happened over and over and over. So these were done in specific places. So the fake first contact template was done at the foot of NORAD. I didn't know what that was going to mean, but now we do. So they're done in different places around the country, only in the United States, because the United States is like the microcosm of the macrocosm. And they can all be tied here. And most of the star seeds in the world are in the United States. And so that's a whole different topic. But That's how the templates are formed. So as we make different choices around a timeline event, which was the fake first contact in that template, everything we think and we do and we feel is recorded in the grid. So you're basically inserting something with a different way of looking at an event that will occur and be tied to that location in the future.
Okay, so in short, if a civil war occurred in the United States, then that would signify a failure of the polarity integration game on planet Earth altogether,
Yes,
because the United States is like the macro of the micro.
correct. Or the micro of the macro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Got it
hard to get
backwards.
those straight into sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that, I guess, and in the one of the recent interviews we did together, you talked about the second polarity game, or the second grand experiment in the Pleiades, where there was a president that was assassinated, and that kind of like took the whole planet into a civil war. So how does that apply to our planet today and the United States?
Well, once again, since there's two grand experiments and then two other catastrophes in that were connected to the human species and their evolution throughout this galaxy. One was in the Vegas constellation, Vegas system of the Lyra constellation. The other one was in the Pleiades. That's Avion 2, the second grand experiment. There was one in Sirius B. It was a catastrophe with the Sirius B sun. And then the one Maldek. Maldek was the fourth one. But the grand experiment in Avion 2 and the Pleiades is the most recent one for us. So we're working on those timelines specifically. Although some of these other timeline events I earlier mentioned are part of the timelines from the Sirius B catastrophe. But we are playing out all those. Okay, we have to have a chance to play them out to make a different choice. All right, so the leader on the second grand experiment, which we believe was assassinated, because they said their words were he was taken out of power. That led to a crisis. The people were shocked. They were decimated, emotionally decimated by this. And at that point, and I'm not sure which part of the military, because the military was split between the part that was working for the extraterrestrials and the part that was working for the people on the planet, the planetary military. One of them ended up doing this, just a dump of disclosure of everything that was going on. And everything that was going on there is going on here. It's just that we don't know as much about what's going on here as they knew there, because they were further along in a transhumanism than we are today. Ours, and I know I'm probably going out on a limb here, but who cares? Here it's underground, but you're going to find out that it's a lot further. You probably know this than the people know. Right now, we know is the transgenderism is the main thing. But on that planet, they were further ahead, maybe 40, 50 years ahead of where we are today. So when they dumped all the disclosure, not just about what was going on out there, but what was going on under the ground on their own planet, the people couldn't take it. They became so enraged, they began turning on each other. And that's how they whipped up a civil war. And that led to nuclear responses and then eventually the destruction of the planet. So, as you can see, and we wrote this 30 years ago, it is happening now. We're having the same issues going on. So that brings us up to the assassinations, because in August of 2017 was when I started this second mission in 2017 in June. In August, they began talking about a summer of blood, where there would be blood in the street. That was what happened on Avion 2. So we thought back then, because, you never know when these events are going to occur. We think it might be imminent, and sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's 5, 10, 15 years away. But it coincided with the assassination of a president. So it did not happen in 2017, but it did happen a few years later. They attempted to kill him. And we had a summer of blood, not in 2017, but we had it in, 2021, 2020, when there was all the burning and looting and killing that was going on. Okay, so we had a form of a summer of blood. That wasn't as bad as what happened on Avion 2. It was all out civil war, blood running in the streets. The idea of the templates is not to stop an event. It is to alter it, to minimize it, and to change the outcome. So our summer of blood was not the kind that they had on Avion 2. It was minimized.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw in there as something that may have been a big mitigating factor in all of that was the Q movement, and Donald Trump as president,
Yes,
supported the Q movement,
yes,
and it was the military intelligence movement. So it seems that the Q movement were on top of this, that they were like just telling everyone, stand down, relax,
yes,
don't
yes.
react to the provocation. So yeah, you want to maybe what is the Q movement really a good example of how the white hats tried to prevent all of this from spiraling out of control?
I would say absolutely, because that was not part of what happened on Avion 2. The people did not know what was going on. Everything was kept hidden from the people, except what they wanted them to know. So when they did the big disclosure dump, everybody went into cognitive dissonance, and they were already traumatized. There was already tremendous racism. Mainly at this point, it was beyond transgender, like I said, transhuman, where there was a severe gap between the people who were still human and the people who were who were transhuman, because they were going after the children and making that a cool thing to become transhuman. So they were taking the children and they were doing the same thing that they're doing here, and that was they were basically pushing the parents aside and saying that, if your child have a bionic arm, you have no right to do anything. So it was further advanced. But what we learned from that was that you have to get them involved. And you have to also contain it to where you don't give them too much too fast. So the Q movement was a brilliant decision to begin to educate the people. And of course, you have the ones who had the autism. Well, that's another story. That even that is perfection, because it was the autist who figured out the patterns. So they come from a different species, many of them, but like I said, that's a different topic. But they came at this time for that purpose, because there's something they wanted in return, something kind of that they needed to heal in return. So anyway, so the Q movement has been very instrumental in keeping and allowing the exposure of the deep state, allowing the truth to come out slowly, and knowing that the deep state is going to retaliate, and they have been retaliating, but keeping the people who are pro-human, pro-America, pro-planetary, the planet Earth, calm, while all this has to come out and be revealed.
Yes, so that's a very important development. And then, of course, you have Butler, Pennsylvania, where President, he was running as a for president at that time.
Yes.
Was almost killed. He survived that, and there were, there have been attempts again for his assassination, but well, I guess there was this incident in England just recently, actually a few days ago, where the helicopter carrying President Trump and the First Lady experienced mechanical difficulties, and so it had to land. So, whether that was part of a plan, but we know that there have been attempts on Trump's life. So where does this Charlie Kirk assassination fit into all of this?
Well, I believe that the Charlie Kirk assassination, if it was truly Charlie Kirk, which we might not want to go into that, but if it was, then the plan was to use that, I believe, as a way to begin exposing the organizations that the deep state has used and weaponized against the public, and not just in America, but in other countries. So they're saying it was a transgender person who did this, and and they've pointed out that with all of these killings, these school shootings, many of those people who supposedly did it, were transgender people. So I believe this is the exposure of the weaponization of the transgender people, as well as their action to Antifa. Because if you can't begin to expose this to the public, then the people don't really understand who the real enemy is.
Okay, so with Kirk, and you kind of like alluded to it maybe not being a black and white assassination, that maybe something else was going on, and there seems to be division on that. So with the Charlie Kirk, the way in which the public seems to have responded so far is more in line with kind of prayer and reconciliation, and so there seems to be a kind of very positive movement where even people that were previously on the left or woke are standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. Targeting political opponents through physical violence is wrong. So has this helped awaken a lot of people that were previously kind of brainwashed into the whole woke left movement?
It appears that it has had a significant impact in the right direction. No pun intended. But yes, it's been really good, because the way that the American people handled that was fabulous. And the fact that they didn't seek revenge. They did not go out and start beating trans people up or anybody who's woke. They have kept calm. But what they did do was they worked within the law, because this must be done legally and lawfully. They began to expose people through social media who were basically cheering, were happy that somebody was murdered. Because they didn't like what he had to say. So they're outing these people by exposing through their own podcasts, what these people, just showing the videos of these people or their text messages of what they were saying and how they were celebrating the death of this young man. So, there's nothing illegal about it, but it's just, you just don't go and dance on somebody's grave. So it's just, it was great the way that they did it. So they didn't resort to violence. They resorted to accountability.
Yes, so that is a very encouraging development, that American society didn't kind of break out into calls of kind of vengeance and attacking transgender people that do have that do kind of like think that political violence is a solution. So that's very, very positive. So I mean, has this kind of like really helped deal with this conflict, or this ancient conflict from the Pleiades, the second grand experiment where the president was killed and society kind of like melted down, that the killing of Charlie Kirk was kind of like a way of dealing with that kind of trauma in a positive, constructive way, or can we expect more stuff to go on?
Well, I think it really helped, and it helped our military to figure out where the people are. Can they handle something more? Can they handle something that could be much more devastating to them? And I think that the way it was handled was very encouraging. So, like we talked about, I think I may have sent you a note back in December of last year that there'd be another assassination, this time president, and I thought it was going to be poisoning. I get it, something about poisoning or something up in the chest area, and that this would be, our current president, but he would survive it. And the very thing that happened this time, where people all over the world begin to pray, they begin to hold vigils. That's very important. That energy is extremely important right now because everything goes up into the mass consciousness grid. And there's a lot of darkness up in the grid right now. So this kind of powerful energy can overcome that dark energy, can almost surround it, encapsulate it, and neutralize that kind of energy. So the fact that they saw the people respond in the way that we need to gives, I hope, encouragement that if and when this next event occurs, which will be, if it occurs, it is the final exam for humanity to see if we can actually achieve harmony and diversity. And that's in the face of losing possibly losing the person that we've been looking to for leadership. We would have to step up and become the leaders collectively to take this planet back from the people, the cabal that has been, running it, and who would have got it if we could not achieve this. So I wanted to talk a moment about what we mean by harmony and diversity, because this is key right now, because now you see in the narrative space them talking about the transgender, they need to be wiped out. The woke people, they need to be wiped out. That is not harmony and diversity. Harmony and diversity is that every one of these groups have space on the planet, but they have to work within boundaries. In other words, they can't force themselves on another group. They must stay in their own lane. And if they do, there are consequences, just like if we try to force ourselves on them. What is the priority? The priority is the ability of a species to continually procreate. Anything that deviates from that can threaten the survival of a species. So if there's a group that wants to switch genders or become transhuman, they'll have a space on the planet, but that cannot be forced on anyone else. And that's got to be the new agreements. So it's not about annihilating anybody. Everybody's got a seat at the table, but they all have to play by the same rules.
Right. You got to stay in your own lane and don't mess with other people's lives or families, and that kind of
or
very
their children.
sensible. Yes. Right.
You cannot indoctrinate their children. Mm-mm.
Right. So with transgenderism, I mean, we kind of like understand how that operates, and you've already discussed it. Less well known, but you did allude to it, is that transhumanism is also a big problem, and has been a big problem on these other kind of like grand experiments, at least the last one. So do you anticipate, or were you told anything about how transhumanism is going to unfold? Will it kind of like just grow in popularity, or will it just be unleashed upon the rest of humanity? or will we have solved these issues by the time transhumanism starts to kind of like really take off in society?
If we are successful with the next big event, then that will basically put the fire out for the transhumanism, because people will work to contain it. Keeping in mind, there are a lot of species, a lot of people down here on this planet right now are human, or they came from non-human origin. A lot of the star seeds are non-human origins, and some of those are actually artificial intelligence species that are experiencing an incarnation in a human body with, you know, a full emotional field that they had never had before, and they're trying to find a balance. So having transhumanism is not necessarily bad. It's just when it becomes the dominant thing and the rights of the people are violated, so that the children can be taken and influenced into becoming transhuman, that's where we cross the line. So I think we'll have it, because it's a natural process and soul evolution to experience the non-human, the non-organic, the mechanical as well as the organic. That's just kind of a soul evolutionary thing for a soul. But, you know, there's a limit to how far you want to go. And everybody should be able to make that choice without undue influence from others.
How prevalent are these AI clones? I mean, I've heard of them being created in big numbers in these underground laboratories. Once again, are they going to be just at some point unleashed, and people are going to have to try and figure out how to deal with these AI clones?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't, if we stay on the timeline we're on right now and we don't deviate and fall backwards, I don't think we're going to have as big an issue with that as we would before. And the people will be much more savvy to picking out a clone, because the clone has no soul and there's a deadness in its eyes. In fact, we talked about that back when we were doing the timeline template in Colorado Springs, because somebody who was in the workshop actually had worked at NORAD and had seen these clones. So thought that's interesting you bring that up. I don't think it's going to be as big a deal if we get through this next piece successfully. We will be on a timeline where that will not be a big issue.
On September 4, the White House hosted the big tech leaders all working on AI, Bill Gates, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, and I think Sundar from Google. And apparently some said that this was a positive development, that these AI, or these big tech leaders working on AI kind of like had defected from the deep state, that the deep state planned to use AI for nefarious purposes, but that on September 4, when they went to the White House, met Trump, met Melania, that they were defecting from the deep state. Do you know anything about that? Could that be true? I mean, is this AI threat largely neutralized now because the White Hats have reached some kind of a deal with these big tech leaders?
Well, that's interesting. I had forgotten all about that. But yeah, if you've already neutralized these people, you want to make a show of that, and you want to make certain that people understand, and a lot of people don't understand right now, that basically they've reined them in. They're not doing away with AI. AI has some very, valuable things that it can do for us. I mean, we need to learn to work with it, not against it, but keep it contained. That's the key, so that it doesn't become smarter than its creator. It doesn't outdo its creator, which is what happened with the reptilians and the Andromedans. So I think overall it's going to be a good thing. Whether they defected or not, I don't know if you call it defected. I think they were neutralized before, and that was a show. I don't even think those were the real people. But this was all part of the movie.
Right. Yes. So that's very encouraging that
Hmm.
that kind of like development has occurred. Now, as far as AI and China is concerned, I mean, is that something we have to be worried about? Because I mean, China seems to have a very different approach to AI. I mean, I think they're just going for it. Whatever can help their economy grow, whatever can help their military achieve superiority. They're just going for it. No regulation, no restraints as you have in the United States.
Hmm. I think that is not going to be an issue simply because the presidents of Russia, United States, China, all excuse me, are all working together to bring an end to the cabal. So I can only assume that they have a series of checks and balances in place for the AI. It's just China may be further ahead in development, and that's okay. Maybe that's what they're going to take a lead on, but I don't think it'll be allowed, and I feel very confident it's not going to be allowed in this new timeline because we don't need it to run out of control to teach us anything. We have already figured this out, and so we won't need that lesson again.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think you've already kind of like talked a little bit about extraterrestrial, like the template. You talked about the template where the extraterrestrials are kind of come in and save humanity. Have we kind of dealt with that successfully? I mean, what is going to be the more likely disclosure event in your view? How do you think disclosure is going to play out?
I think it's going to be played out a little, fed a spoonful at a time.
So the white hats will be in
Because we've
control.
got
The
it, we
Earth Alliance
cannot
will be in
avoid, we
control.
cannot. Hmm. Yeah, and that way, because
Okay. Sorry,
when
I
we
didn't want to
decide,
interrupt.
no, that's all right. Uh, when this whole plan first started, no one realized just how deeply asleep and programmed this, America was, in particular America. And so you can't shake them awake because the other side is just waiting for you to do something like that, because then they're going to stoke a fire and try to start a civil war. So you have to be very, very careful. I think what they were surprised by is how long it's taken, and the things that they tried that did not have the same effect that they thought it would. So they learned they had to go slower, which is why people are complaining, because the people who are now awake want to see something happen. And they don't have the patience to wait for the others to be awakened with future events, nor do they want to have to suffer through those events knowing that they are part of a movie to wake somebody else up. And this is where we got hung up the last time in the other grand experiment, is that we lost patience. So it wasn't just the cognitive dissonance of having everything dumped at one time, because there were people awake. It's the fact that we didn't have the patience to have it done slowly, and we had lost our leader.
I see. So, but that has kind of, at the moment, that hasn't happened because there still is the leader, and people are still uncertain as to what role Trump is going to play with disclosure. I mean, he hasn't really kind of stepped up to the fore to champion disclosure and say there's all these secret projects that need to be revealed. He's kind of focusing more on bread and butter, right-wing Republican issues, illegal immigration, crime, and all of that sort of thing. So, will at some point Donald Trump kind of step up to the plate and say, yes, we need to move with disclosure, and this is what's going on, and he's going to start spilling the beans?
Well, I don't know if he's going to be the one to do it. I think he's having others do it. Right now, he's exposing autism to RFK Jr. He's exposing the Epstein files and the child trafficking. You're seeing that go on. So they're doing the basic stuff right now, the planetary stuff that needs to be exposed before they ever get to the extraterrestrial thing. Because you've got that one big hang up there, which is the Christian base, which is basically the engine that drives a train you can't get in America in particular. So you don't want to shake those people by telling them that they're not the only species in the universe, which is one of the foundation beliefs in the Christian movement. So that has to come at the end. All this other stuff, all this other terrestrial stuff has to come out, and people have to be able to digest that, the child trafficking, the Satanism, all that's been going on. That is very important before we get to the other stuff. By the time we get to the extraterrestrials, people will be prepared. They're like, yeah, we've seen through all these lies. Yeah, the fact that we're alone, yeah, that's a lie. And they can handle it better.
Yeah, so far it seems to be just a few people in Congress. I mean, there's this UAP caucus in the House of Representatives, and there's a few members of the US Senate that are like talking about extraterrestrials, UFOs, classified government projects, reverse engineering. But they're in the minority. They tried to pass something called the UFO Disclosure Act, but it's failed for a third time to be included in legislation. So they seem to just be very few in numbers and lacking political support. So, people, and myself included, are saying, kind of looking at all of this, saying, yes, the disclosure process is moving really slowly at an official level. But at an unofficial level, there seems to be just more and more people having contact and more insiders coming forward, contactees coming forward. So at an organic level, there seems to be like a rising tide of awareness.
From what I understand, it's going at the pace it needs to go, because it's being seeded out there into the consciousness. But we're dealing with other very important matters that must come first.
Mm-hmm. What role do you think, or do you know about the inner Earth civilizations, or the civilizations at the bottom of the oceans that are very old? They've been here millennia. What role are they going to play in disclosure?
I do not have any information on it. None of that was given to me. So what I deal with is the timeline event playing out. If there is something I need to know about them, they will let me know and I will share it with you. But so far, they have not talked about that.
Do you think someone like the Vice President, J.D. Vance, is eventually going to kind of like run with this issue? I know he admitted that he was, really diving into the UFO issue, that he had an obsession with it. He admitted that he was obsessed with the UFO information. So, if President Trump is kind of distracted by all these other revelations and issues, Vance kind of seems to be the logical choice to be the one heading the disclosure process.
And that may be part of the plan, because I don't believe Trump's the one who's going to come out with it. I believe it'll be somebody else within his team that will come out. Each one is going to have something that they're going to disclose instead of him, because right now there's still so many people against him that it would not act that he would like. So they're going to have other people, credible people, come out and expose some of this stuff. But as I said, for us to be successful this time, these other issues that have been hidden that are affecting us must be dealt with first. And as these things are exposed and people digest the fact that they've been lied to, they're going to be much more capable of accepting other things that they've been lied to about that are butt up against their religious beliefs. because we do not want anything that would destroy the foundation of this liberation of this planet.
So yeah, why don't you just tell us what you see lying ahead, given everything that you've described so far, that we've been able to avoid repetition of these kind of civil war dynamics that led to the destruction of the second grand experiment, and we are in the third or fifth, depending on your perspective. So any kind of final words you want to say about what the future holds?
Well, I think the future is very bright. I feel like there's going to be another big event. It may be another attempted assassination, but it will not succeed if it does. But what I see happening from that is what happened this time with Charlie, larger scale, where if they take out the president, you're going to see and they are going to pray, and they are going to get us, that energy is going to go into the grid, it's going to get us over the top, and we're going to see this whole thing shift after that. So I think the future, it's going to be a rough ride, but we're going to get through it by the skin of our teeth and a bit more.
Okay, Jelaila. Well, I see your screen blacked out again, so we're probably at the end of this interview, given the limitations of the technology that we're using. So I want to thank you for coming back on to Exopolitics today and to share with us, the latest information that you have on the grand experiments that are unfolding, the perspective from the Niburian Council, and what lies ahead.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you, and aloha.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.